At the end of 2024, I set myself a challenge for 2025 to read 10 books that I had been actively avoiding for a few years, and if I didn't, then I would have to unhaul them by the end of the year. Did I manage it? And I did it! I'm so happy that I managed to get through all of these books. A lot of them, all of them bar one, were chunkers, making this a very difficult stack to lift. The chin was needed. But yeah, all of them but one were big books. Oh, well, Cilka's Journey wasn't too big, but it's a hardback. But yeah, I did it! I read all of them. There's 10/11 because one of them's a bind-up of a duology. And I got through all of them. What the fuck? In total, it was 6,427 pages, and I averagely read them in 15.5 days, is roughly what it took me for each of these. The longest one it took me to read is on the bottom of the fucking stack, and that is Edge of Eternity by Follett. This took me 26 days to read. It's also the biggest book, the longest. It is 1,004 pages, so not too bad that it took me the longest. It's only a day longer than some of the others. And the book that took me the shortest time to read is indeed the shortest book, and that is Foundation by Lackey. This took me 5 days to read. And then the oldest book from this stack, as in the one that was published the longest ago, is The Name of the Rose by Umberto, which was published in 1980. I never actually went into the stats of the genre when I set this up to begin with, so I thought it would be interesting to look, because there is one genre that is prevalent, shall we say. So there was 1 sci-fi book, 2 fantasy books, 1 non-fiction, and the rest were historical fiction books. So I'm going to put these back in the order I had them. How inconvenient, I set this all up. And then I'm going to go through each book one by one. This is a very unbalanced stack. The first book that I read was A Winter of the World by Follett. My reasoning behind this was that I had 2 books from the same series that were big from Follett on this list. So I thought I'd start with one that's wintry and it worked in January, but also got it out of the way so that if I did manage to read both of the books in the series, that they would be nicely spread apart. And I enjoyed this a lot more than I enjoyed the first book. This one, the women were written much better, and I also happen to know a lot more about World War II than I do about World War I, and so I enjoyed this book a lot more. It also had a little bit more of the global influence than the first book. This whole series is the Centuries trilogy. Book 1 is World War I, Book 2 is World War II, and Book 3 is World War III. I'll leave it at that and talk more about the series when I talk about the third one, but I'm glad I finished it. This was my favourite of the trilogy, I think. Then I read The Knife of Never Letting Go by Ness. I was buddy reading this. We did a whole read-along, read-a-thon, reading the whole series. I read the other 2 via ebook because I don't physically own them, but I finally read it. I read it with friends. This series is fantastic. Oh my god, I would have loved it if I'd read it years ago. I loved it now, but oh, this series is so good. So this is a sci-fi series. We are in Prentice Town, and everyone can hear everyone else's thoughts, and there are only men, there are no women. And Todd Hewitt is almost a man, he's our main character, and he unexpectedly stumbles into a spot of complete silence. There's no noise from animals, from people, nothing. And that's not possible. And the story goes from there. That's all that's mentioned on the blurb, so I don't want to say much, but Ness, this is old. This is not new. This is like, this came out a little while ago. Let me see. Tell me when. So this was from the noughts, the late noughts, and yet this book is so good on gender, sexism, racism, xenophobia, everything. This series is absolutely fantastic, beautifully written, still stands up today, and really thought-provoking but also engaging and very well done. Discussions on violence, on community, this series is so fantastic and I absolutely loved it. Like, so glad I finally got to that one. One I'm less glad to have read, and that is Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. I picked this one up because it was published in 1996, which is my birth year, and it was Margaret Atwood, and that was it. It was an interesting concept, so we're following, god, I read this months ago. We are in the 1840s and we're following Grace, and she is a working girl, working in big houses across Canada. In real life, the actual Grace was committed for murder. And this is the story of, did she do this, did she not, what was her life like, how did she end up in Canada? She's actually, I believe, Irish. Gosh, it's been a while since I read this. But unfortunately, despite the intense amount of research that Atwood did, that was clearly reflected in here, she wasn't able to make me really care. I didn't care what happened to Grace, I didn't care if she turned out to be the murderer and if she got committed for it. or if she was like, oh, I was just like, okay, sure. And it was a struggle to get through. So unfortunately I really didn't like this one, which is such a pity. I've actually taken this out of an unhaul pile. I unhauled this earlier in the year, but kept onto it just for this video. And it will be going to a charity shop, which is where I got it from. But yeah, unfortunately this just wasn't for me. But I'm glad I finally got it off of the TBR, because if I'd unhauled it without reading it, I always would have wondered. Which is why I struggle to unhaul things from my TBR. But yeah, this one was not for me. Then I read Cilka's Journey by Heather Morris. This is the second book in the Tattooist of Auschwitz series. The first one killed me. This one did not kill me as much as the first one, but was really interesting looking at the Russian gulags. I just picked this up because it was the next one, and I was like, it's probably the same. It's probably set in World War II. And it's not. It's the Russian gulags instead, and it's a really interesting look at that. I will say that I don't think it's entirely accurate. Like, she says that it's linked into actually Lel Sokolov, who is the inspirational character in The Tattooist of Auschwitz, a real man who survived Auschwitz and spoke to Heather Morris, and apparently this is linked in with that. But I've heard from reviews, reading different reviews, that this is historically inaccurate. The numbers don't match up, as in the tattoo numbers on the arms, and I think that I am taking this book myself as not a fictionalisation of an actual true story, but instead as a historical fiction that's been well researched. So I do think that Morris did a lot of research on the gulags and on Russia at this time, and how this then impacted people who had been in the concentration camps, but I don't think that this is a real life story that she's fictionalised. I'm not going to say enjoy, but I did find myself engrossed in this story. I got a lot out of reading it, and I learnt a lot that I didn't know before about the gulags. I learnt a little bit about that in the Ken Follett series as well, so it was interesting to kind of learn all of that this year. It does have its merits, but it's not a fictionalisation of a true story, it's just a fictionalisation of historical fact, if that makes sense. Talking of facts, I then read Wonders of the Solar System and the Universe by Professor Brian Cox and Andrew Cohen. This chunker, this is the heaviest of them all, has a mixture of illustrations and text all throughout, and matches up with a TV series that I've not yet watched. That's why, theoretically, it had just been sat on my TBR, is that I wanted to read along each chapter with each episode of the TV series. Haven't done that, still haven't watched the TV series. I will get round to it at some point. But this was a really interesting book. I know a little bit about space. Most of it I don't remember the detailed facts, so it was interesting to be re-reminded or to learn stuff brand new in this one. It's an interesting book. Good coffee table book, I would say, and I do think that they did well in not novelising, but making a book out of the story, out of the TV show. They mentioned some aspects of how it was to film the show, which I enjoyed having added in into the book. And yeah, this was a really good one. Especially the RRP is £50, and I paid, I believe, if I'm remembering, like £5. So I think I did all right. Price-wise there. £6. How dare I be wrong? £6. So just over 10% of the price is what I paid. So definitely worth it for that. And if you see it in the library and if you're curious about this sort of thing, it is a good book. Okay, then I read The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. This is translated from Italian and is set in the 1300s, yes, and we follow Brother William, who's actually British. He arrives at a wealthy Italian abbey on theological business, and there are 7 bizarre deaths, and Brother William turns into a detective and has an assistant, kind of Holmes and Watson style, but set in 1300s Italy. I learned a fair bit about how abbeys function. That hasn't changed much over history, so that was interesting to look at, especially because we've visited quite a few abbeys on our days out this year, because we've got a car now. And it was a really interesting read. I'm keeping this one. I really enjoyed the mystery aspect of it and how it unfolded, how we learnt more about the monks as we tried to unravel the mystery and how other mysteries were unravelled along with it. It's just a well-crafted mystery story, but also with that additional research and context of monks in the 1300s. There's also a note in here from Umberto Eco where he said that when he originally wrote it, people wrote into him saying that they were struggling to decipher the Latin that was used, because of course monks, 1300s, monks. But he said that the whole point of this is that you flow with the story, and luckily that's how I read anyway. Unless I'm rereading, I just read. I'm just vibing. I'm like, if I can't infer it from the context, which I usually can, then I'm going. It's fine. And that's actually what he wants you to do in this one. He doesn't want you to stop and to learn the Latin and to figure out what he's saying. He wants you to just go with the flow of the story. And I thought that was important to mention in case you do want to pick this one up, because you're not supposed to translate all the Latin. You're supposed to enjoy the vibes. Then my short book, Foundation by Mercedes Lackey. This is the first book in the Collegium Chronicles, and I enjoyed this so much that I decided I was going to continue in the series and have been gifted books 2 and 3 by the wonderful Carrie from Caring for Books. And this is a fantasy series that reminded me ever so slightly of the books of Pellinor, so of course I enjoyed it. We follow a young boy who's called Magpie, and he's enslaved at the start of the story. He goes into the mines and gets the gems out of it, gives it to the mine owner, who sells them off and then treats them like shit. Are you seeing the links with Pellinor here? Because there are more. Then, I think they're published a similar time. I'm not saying either one of them copied the other. I'm just explaining why I liked it. So then Magpie is found by someone who is magical and high up and powerful, and he is taken away from this enslavement and freed and brought to a school environment where people learn to utilise their magic. And he also has a horse that he can talk to. Actually speak to. He is learning more about this world that he had no clue about, because when he was enslaved he was obviously isolated from the rest of the world and was enslaved from such a young age that he doesn't know anything else, and so we are learning with him about this world. It's a really good way of showing and telling someone about a universe. I do think there was a little too much telling, there was a bit too much info dumping, and I think that that's true in story as well. They told him too much at once. I think that it should have been drip-fed more, and he seemed to understand it. No. So that was my one complaint about this one, is that like near the beginning it's just like boom, here's a load of facts, and that should have been spread out more in my opinion. But everything else was fantastic. I'm really enjoying the magic system that's used in here, and I want to learn more about it. I want to learn more about the system with being able to speak to different animals. I enjoyed learning about the different classes of society and how they interact, and obviously there's stuff going down here, there's dark forces and the like, and I really liked this book and I'm looking forward to carrying on in the series. It's like getting to read more Pellinor without the Pellinor. My next read was Citadel by Kate Mosse, which is the third book in the Languedoc series, and this was my favourite of all 3. All 3 books follow a similar system. We have 2 time periods. One is set way back when, in this book that is 300 AD, and another time period is set much closer to the modern day. In this one it's the 1940s. In this book, 1940s, this is in France, so we're following World War II in France. We also had the least amount from the ye olde days in here. The part of the story that's set in the 300s is the smallest amount compared to the other 2. I'm pointing because they're down there, but the smallest amount compared to the other 2 books. I was absolutely fine with that. I think it worked really well. I think it was paced fantastically, but just interesting to know if you have read any of the other books in the series. You can read them as standalones, it's absolutely fine. They just kind of go up in time. This one, being set in World War II, I had a lot about World War II and the general European 20th century wars in this stack, and I knew next to nothing about France during World War II. I've read All the Light You Cannot See, and that was it. That was my knowledge of this, and, you know, when Britain was in places doing the war stuff. But I knew nothing about the actual life, and this was a really interesting look at that. We are set in Carcassonne, as Kate Mosse is wont to do, and we're learning about the concentration camp, about the occupation of the Nazis and how that impacted individuals and communities, and the resistance that was of course in France, as we all know, but I had never really learnt about it. I just knew it existed, but that was it. And so this was really fascinating to learn a lot about that time period in, as well as having these emotional connections to the characters and deeply caring about what happens to all of them. This was really well written. I cried at the end, and it was so annoying because part of the reason I'd left this for so long was the length, but also Labyrinth and Sepulchre were just fine, and I'd only kept them because I had this 3rd book, and I was like, once I've read the 3rd one I can unhaul it and get rid of them all. And then I cried at this one, I gave it 5 stars, and now I have all 3 of them. So I'm debating which ones I keep. We will see. They're not going in any sort of upcoming unhaul, but I'm debating which ones I may end up keeping on my shelves. But this, it was so well written, so engrossing. so good. I absolutely loved this. I really recommend it over the other two. And I do think you can read them all as standalones, really. It's the same concept, and there are links. Of course, it's all in Carcassonne, and so there are things that are linked through time with all of them, but you can read them on their own. So this one might be the only one that stays. For the double bind-up book, is that what I'm calling it? We have The Dark Vault by V.E. Schwab, which is the archived and the unbound together. I wasn't sure if I was going to read both of these, read just one. I gave myself that leeway. I let myself just read one if I needed to, but I have read them both, and I read them via audiobook. This is the Schwab books that I've cared the most about. That doesn't mean it's the best Schwab books I've read, but I struggle with Schwab so much. I adore her concepts. The concepts in the other books I think are actually better than this one, just because this is YA and I would prefer to read adult fiction at the moment. The concepts are fantastic, but this one I cared the most about the characters, and I'm wondering if it's because I read it via audiobook, because when you read an audiobook, especially of a new series, you can often feel a little more disconnected from the characters, and I feel disconnected from Schwab's characters anyway, and so I'm wondering if I was like, well, it's an audiobook, of course I'm disconnected, meant that I enjoyed it more? I don't know, but I'm unhauling it regardless, but I did enjoy it. I gave it like 3.5 stars. We're following Mackenzie Bishop, and she has access to, what do they call it, the library, and they basically collect wandering spirits and return them back to the library so they're not bothering the living world, and obviously shit goes down and she has to try and help them sort things out. It's a really well written plot, it's fine. I've read so many Schwab. And finally, The Edge of Eternity by Ken Follett, 1004 pages. The final book in the Centuries trilogy. So in this one, we still do follow the families that we've been seeing in the first two books. Again, the research done into these is fantastic. I can't remember now what I said at the start of the video, and I said I was going to talk about the series at the end, so we may have some duplication here. You are very welcome. But the three books, I think I said, were World War I, World War II and World War III, and we follow families from Russia, Britain, so England and Wales, America from different sides, and also Germany, and we see how the Cold War impacted them all. It was really interesting to see both sides, because in the other books we don't have anyone who's high up in the German side of the war, but in this one we have people who are high up in Russia and high up in America, so we see more of the active working against each other, which I did really enjoy that aspect of it actually. And this whole series is incredibly well researched, very historically accurate, following fictionalised characters with some real characters popped in because you can't miss out Kennedy from a Cold War book. But it is fictionalised characters who are then set in these real world situations. I am begrudgingly impressed with Follett because I have struggled with a lot of his books. Historical fiction is something I read a lot less of nowadays, which is my own thing, and also he's written women horrifically across his books, but he has improved. Winter of the World and Edge of Eternity are much better than Fall of Giants and also Pillars of the Earth. Anything's better than Pillars of the Earth. He has improved a lot with that, and I did enjoy seeing how the stories developed. How dare I? How dare I? And those are the 10/11 books that I did read. None of them have to be unhauled, but some of them are being unhauled. The Ken Follett books are being temporarily unhauled because they're going to my dad, because I think he will enjoy reading them. And actually unhauled are 3 books, and some of them will surprise you. So I don't think V.E. Schwab is surprising you. It was fine, it was good for a Schwab for me, it's going. Alias Grace is not going to surprise you. I didn't like this book. What is going to surprise you is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. But I don't own the other 2 books, and at this moment in time I don't plan on buying them. I've read them already. I will reread my ebooks if I need to. I can get an ebook of this first one. I don't have the shelf space to be picky. So even though this was a 4.5 star read and I really enjoyed it, and usually that means I'm keeping it, I don't think I'm going to reread this anytime soon, and I can pick up another copy, and by unhauling it, this might get someone else to pick up this series, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's why it's going. There will be an unhaul video coming out at some point around December. I don't know if this video is coming out first or if the unhaul will be. That depends on what editing Abby can manage to put together. These 3 are going, so I still got rid of some chunky books off of my shelves by doing this challenge. I'm debating what's going to happen with the Ken Follett books, but I have time because it's like 3,000 pages in total that my dad has to get through. So it gives me a little bit of time to decide what I'm doing with them. But I managed it. I'm very happy. This bodes well for the 2026 version of this challenge. I do have that linked up here if you want to see it. But yes, I have done the same thing for next year. These are less, some of them are big, but these are less about big books, which seems to be the theme of 2025, and instead is literally the oldest ones. I went and made a spreadsheet. So we shall see how 2026 goes. Let me know down in the comments below, please, if you've read any of these books. I would love to know your opinions on them. Yes, Becca, I know you love Schwab. But anyone else with any of the other books, I would love to know what you think of them, if you're potentially going to pick any up. I would recommend quite a few. Citadel as well, but it's on the bottom of a stack. And yes, hopefully I am this successful by the end of 2026. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye!